This is Nasha Kasha, Ukrainian Almanac. 28 minutes of stories for everyone about Ukrainian life. I'm your reporter, Stefan Andrusiak from Winnipeg. This is episode 280. I was 16 when I met my cousin Mary. She, her mother, and older sister Hanya were in Montreal to visit Expo 67. Her mother wanted them to understand that they had family. My mother and she immediately bonded. I found this kind of special. Mary's mother and father were heading for an acrimonious divorce. My mother and I were related to her father. You will hear that there is a certain kind of chippiness to our relationship, but I think that Mary really likes me. As the years passed, I would visit Winnipeg. When Rushnechok was asked to play at the Dauphin Ukrainian Festival, I asked if Mary, who was much younger, wanted to come along for the 3-day trip. She was 17 at the time. Her mother agreed. If that isn't trust, I don't know what is. This story is about 3 remarkable women who played it tough, persevered, and made some wonderful friends along the way.
Молоді ми, світ нам відкрито, перед нами сміється земля. У житті нам дано полюбити вербовини, ліси й поля. Не стріляй голови у знемозі, бо зірок не побачиш тоді. Уперед нам іти по дорозі, світ є гарний, ми молоді.
Rushnechok, Volume 3, Cut 2, Molodime, We Are Young.
Hi, I'm Mary Paulus, and I am from West St. Paul, Manitoba, just on the outside of the city of Winnipeg.
And I'm your cousin.
And Stefan is my cousin. I'm not really thrilled about it, but it's okay. I do like his wife a lot better.
For transparency purposes, I wanted everybody to know that we're related. Monica, tell me the story of your parents coming to Canada.
My mother was taken by the Germans into a labor camp. Actually, it was her sister that was to be taken, but her sister was not in good health, so she volunteered to go. And I guess she meant my father to be there. They got married in Germany. My sister was born in Germany. My dad came to Canada, I think, a year before my mother, my sister. He came in 1948, and Mom and Hanya came in 1949.
He came to find work?
He came to find work, plus they had a cousin who had a grocery store here, and they stayed with them for a while till they found their own place.
Tell me about the importance of food to your parents, to your mom especially.
My mother said when she was working in Germany at nighttime, they would go to the farmers' fields and steal food because there wasn't that much. And I had many talks with my mom, and Mom said that she made herself a promise that when she came to Canada, she would never go hungry again. When she came to Canada, she worked in a restaurant washing dishes for 10 cents an hour and then would walk home from Portage and Notre Dame to Stella Avenue, and it'd be about midnight. They did get enough money to buy their own house. Mom got a job at Northwest Bakery, which was on Arlington. She worked also at the Donut House. And then my dad worked at CP, and then they got their money together and they decided to buy a grocery store. Their friend said, you should buy a hotel. So they bought a hotel in Lorette, which was a man's beer parlor. Then it was converted into a beverage room, which it was quite successful. That was from 1963 to 66.
The difference between a beer parlor and a beverage room is that women and men can partake in drinking there?
Yes, because when it was bought, it was only for men, and that was it. And then Mom says this wasn't right. To make it a successful business, we should build it into a beverage room, and a beverage room was added to the hotel.
So food at every step of the way, and she was never hungry again.
No, my mother was about 5'5", and in her best days, she was solid 220 pounds. And when we were in the hotel, one of the customers got unruly, and Mom grabbed him by his shirt and his pants and threw him out of the hotel.
I knew your mother. I believe you very, I can just see it.
Yeah, Mom was not afraid. My father was the one that stayed in the background, and my mom was the one that wore the pants in the family.
Tell me about your sister and you growing up. First of all, your sister's name was Hanya.
Hanya worked in the hotel with Mom, and at that time you had to be 21 to work in the hotel, and I think Hanya was about maybe 19 or 20. And my father wasn't inclined to work. He was busy partying, so it came to the point that my parents were going to get a divorce, and they were separating. In 1966, we left the hotel, but Hanya helped Mom the whole time.
Мені сорочка мама вишивала, неначе долю хрестиком вела, щоб я легких стежинок не шукала, і до людей привітною була. Вікону доню мама говорила, життя законне істини прості. Не зраджу землю, що тебе зростила, не залишай нікого у біді. А сорочка мамина біла, біла, а сорочка мамина серцю мила, а сорочка мамина зігріває, я її до серденька пригортаю.
To put it politely, your father was a no-show and left the whole enterprise for your sister and your mom to carry.
Yep. The hotel was sold, and then we came into the city. We stayed with friends till we found a house. And in 1966, I found papers, and it said, "No woman alone shall own a house in her name."
Я її до серденька пригортаю.
My father said to her before they parted ways that my mother will not be successful. She will never own anything on her own. And it turned out that my mother got help from her lawyer and from the man that we bought our house. She bought a house. Then she turned around and bought a business, Pat's Lunch on McDermott Avenue. And then shortly after that, we bought a car.
This wasn't some lunch counter in the suburbs or in North Winnipeg. Your mom moved into the very exchange area, the heart of business in downtown Winnipeg. That must have taken foresight and some courage.
My mother wasn't afraid of anything, so it was not courage. She said we had to do it, and that's the way it was going to be. She bought the restaurant. It was for $5,000 in those days, and we were only to stay there for 5 years. And then Mom says, you know what, we're going to buy a bigger restaurant, like the one across the street, which was larger, and it had liquor. And Mom says, well, no, we're not going to do liquor anymore. So we stayed in the restaurant. We took possession. And 36 and a half years later, we walked out.
Pat's opened October 1st, 1968. The no liquor determination, that was because of your dad's drinking?
It wasn't because of my dad's drinking. It was the hard work and the labor and the hours. And Mom didn't want to go through that. She wanted it a little bit easier. And Pat's Lunch, we opened up at 6 o'clock. And we would be done by 2:30, 3 o'clock.
Walk me through the day. Walk me through a typical day. You're in the car going to and you're unlocking the restaurant.
Well, I was going to school, and Mom would be the first one that would go to the restaurant. She would take the bus because it was not far from our house. It was a few steps. She would get there about 10 to 6 because the bread man and the milkman would come with deliveries. She would turn on the coffee machine, open up the grill, the oven, the fryers. And then shortly, I think her first customers would come in around 6:30. Hanya would get there for about 7, and I was in school. Breakfast would start. You washed the dishes. Everything was cleared. And then the preparations, everything was ready in the oven. And then lunch would start anywhere from about 11 o'clock till 1:30, 2 o'clock.
I remember visiting once as a very young man and wanting to be a good guest after your mom served me a meal. So I, without her approval, really took my own dishes into the kitchen and washed them. And I remember, I think it was you who came up beside me and critiqued my technique. You said, that's not how you wash dishes, soap them and then rinse them and then dry them. You fill one of the two sinks with hot water. You wash them with soap, dish soap, and then you leave the dish, all the dishes, all the forks, just put them in the hot water, and then you pull them out of the water and let them air dry. That's still my technique today.
And that's the technique you're taught by the health department. I still do it to this day.
Well, thank you for the lesson.
You're quite welcome.
Jakby mені севіки, я сідельці маю, поїхав би за Дунай, там дівчину знаю. А я все дивлюся, де моя Маруся, я все дивлюся, де ж ти моя Маруся. А я все дивлюся, де моя Маруся, я все дивлюся, де ж ти моя Маруся. Як приїхав за Дунай, на горбиці хата, старий кіт, стара баба, ще й дівка Кирпата. А я все дивлюся, де моя Маруся, я все дивлюся, де ж ти моя Маруся, а я все дивлюся, де моя Маруся, я все дивлюся, де ж ти моя Маруся.
Well, Ron Cahoot and Booria.
Hi there, my name is Patty Petrie from Winnipeg, and I certainly do remember Pat's Lunch. I worked for the Winnipeg Police Service in the Vice Division back in those days as a clerk. Pat's Lunch fed many police officers and civilian members too. It's just one of those iconic places, and it really should be a historic landmark. I can always remember walking to Pat's Lunch and the smell of bacon and onions, pierogies for lunch. But really, there were always heavenly aromas lofting in the air on McDermott Avenue. 'Twas delicious food, home-cooked food, served with a smile. Well, Anya didn't smile much, but Mary did. Great people and a fabulous little place.
А я все дивлюся, де моя Маруся, я все дивлюся, де ж ти моя Маруся.
I forgot to ask you, at which point did you, because you pictured yourself as a student off at school, when did you join Pat's Lunch full-time?
Well, during elementary school and high school and junior high, I went after school or on days off. But then I went to university. And then I think it was at the age of 21 that I decided I wanted to be in the restaurant, and I stayed in the restaurant.
Коломийна, колоброду, тумба, 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 там дівчина набрала воду, тумба, 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 я на неї задивився, тумба, 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 візок мені поломився, тумба, тумба, тумба.
Talk to me about the garment district. I guess there's a Jewish flavor to it, the factory owners.
The exchange district was absolutely fabulous. It was factories, manufacturer agents, a few stores, and different types of businesses. There was the Goodwill industry. Dell's Electric is still there. They sell motors. There was Fried and Fried. Peter Nygaard came down. Sam Cates and Bruce Rathbone and Kevin Donnelly, they owned Night Out Entertainment, who brought all the entertainment into Winnipeg. When you went into the area, it was difficult to find a parking space. I could step out of the building where our restaurant was, and you would run into people, or people would be honking at you. It was just alive. One company that is still in the area, Richelieu Sportswear, we had Mr. Rich come down. His son David took it over, and now David's son Gavin has taken it over. They're very successful. They extended their line into Europe.
Hello, Stefan. My name is Gavin Rich. I am David Rich's son. David and I operate Richelieu Manufacturing, makers of Tough Duck work safety and lifestyle apparel, and we still have the same location across the street from Pat's Lunch as we did back in the early 70s. And going down those stairs was an experience. The deeper you sunk down the stairs, the more the delicious smells would penetrate your nose. It was the cleanest, most sparkling place you could ever want to go. There was a lunch counter in the traditional sense on the left side as you walked in, and on the outside were tables of 4. But in the middle of Pat's Lunch was really what made the restaurant tick. The large table, perhaps 12 seats, I think. And at that table, you would have, at any given lunchtime, all the garment manufacturer owners and sales managers and production managers all gathering. And millions of dollars of deals and lies were exchanged at that table, according to David Rich, who was certainly a willing participant in that middle table for many, many years. Pat, Mary, and Ann loved serving huge, generous portions. However, you certainly heard when you did not finish your meal. I'm a vegan today, but I certainly remember the roast beef piled high on big, thick cub bread, I think, with delicious gravy, homemade, poured on top of it. Friday being Meatless Friday in the tradition, there's always pierogies, and you could order pierogies 3 ways: boiled, pan-fried, or deep-fried. I certainly remember the borscht. It would come creamy. They would put the sour cream in the borscht and mix it in, not the traditional way that my Jewish Baba would make it, but delicious. And oatmeal, I remember Pat made it with cream, not water. It was a very creamy, delicious oatmeal, quite rich, and certainly stuck to your ribs. And I think my all-time favorite was the potato soup. One time, Pat was peeling potatoes. My father, David, said, "Pat, what are you doing with those potato skins?" And she says, "Well, they're garbage. They're garbage." And being a garment manufacturer where we use every little piece of cloth and scrap and thread and everything that we possibly can, my father, David, said to Pat, "Well, can you just fry those up for me and make them for me?" And sure enough, Pat takes the potato skins and fries them up and gives them to my father, David, and they're the most delicious thing. And he says, "Pat, you've got to put these on the menu. These, you can call them," and because we're in the garment business and we make outerwear, David said, "You can call these Rich Lou potato jackets."
These are the Kubasonics from Newfoundland, Tumba Tumba, a song about encounters on the roads of life.
Hello everyone, Yaktam Kolovas. My name is Ron Tracolo. I'm from Winnipeg. I got to know them around 1984 when I was working with the Vice Division with the Winnipeg Police. For breakfast, we would come down there, and Mary would serve us. So when Morenka would come, she'd start pouring us coffee, and we'd say, "Oh, how are you? How are you, Mary?" And "What do you want?" She'd bark right away. She was no mood for conversation. Just order the food so they can get it cooked. There was another incident with Hanya. She landed up bringing in a breakfast order to a customer, and the guy says to her, he says, "Hey, this isn't what I ordered." And I remember Hanya looking at the guy and saying, "Shut up and eat." So that was a big joke after the time about the new mantra for Pat's Lunch, which was order what you want, eat what you get. Mom was such a nice lady. She really liked me because I would go to the kitchen in the back and talk to her. And trust me, nobody was allowed back in the kitchen except only special people. So I was kind of honored that I had that distinct privilege. And I always spoke to her in Ukrainian. She loved it. And on special occasions, such like Ukrainian Christmas or anything like that, she'd have a bottle in the back, and her and I would have a shot together. My family became good friends with them eventually, and to this day, Marenka and my family, we keep in touch with each other. Marenka's always calling me to do something for her. If something breaks down, she always phones track to get things fixed. I really miss Mom and Hanya, and I'm still putting up with Marenka. Pat's Lunch was always filled, and the price is reasonable. All types of people attended there. They came there for the food and also for the unique type of greetings they would receive, because it was pretty funny and people just kept coming back for more. It was incredible. So it was a very, very special place, and it was well known in Winnipeg, and sad to see it close. So Marenka, just to wish you well. We'll see you soon. We'll see you soon. And hey, you still owe me some pierogies.
My name is Joe Gallagher in Winnipeg. I'm a retired Winnipeg Police Department officer. The diner was named after the matriarch of the family, Pat Paulus, a single parent who, regardless of the weather, arrived at 6:30 a.m. Monday to Friday by bus from their home in West Kildonan. The hours of the establishment were from 7 a.m. to about 2 p.m., no later, as Mary had to get home for her nap. Pat was the greeter, a server, and the general manager of the establishment. Anne was the cook and the problem solver, and a very good one at that, while Mary was the main server and she took on the public relations role. Daily lunch specials included spaghetti and meat sauce, beef stew, a very hearty beef stew, cabbage rolls, and pierogies, and on Friday, pickerel fillets. A homemade butter tart or a piece of house-made apple or banana cream pie provided a fitting ending and dessert. No one left hungry. I recall on the final day, about 20 serving and retired police officers were there to provide help for the move, and this included taking everything out, including the tables, freezers, and large refrigeration equipment, and also providing congratulations and support to Mary and Anne for what they had succeeded in doing for all those years. Sadly, Anne passed away in 2010, but most of the officers who were there on that final day and many others remain friends and keep in close contact with Mary even to this day.
Joe Gallagher, who worked for the Winnipeg Police Services for more than 29 years, retired as a deputy police chief. He followed his policing career with practicing law, including 6 years with the Law Society of Manitoba and 2 years with the Manitoba Ombudsman's Office.
Hi there. My name is Glenn Rand. Nickname's Bootsy. That's what everybody calls me by, especially Mary. I was with the Winnipeg Police Department for 25 years. I retired 17 years ago. I probably first started going to Pat's Lunch 35 years ago, I'd say. At that time, Mama Pat was there and the two girls, Mary and Hanya, and it was quite a place. Many of us would go for breakfast or lunch. While there, we'd always learn all the gossip going on in the police department because Mary knew it all. So Pat was the boss. She was the quiet leader. She walked around and made sure everything was done. Hanya never left the kitchen, very efficient. And Mary went from table to table to table and would make fun of us. It was basically a shtick. Every day you went there, there was someone else getting picked on by somebody or, Mary mocking you, making fun of you. They had a cash register. I think the thing was like from 1928. And they had the best food in town. You'd order something, Mary would order it. It might not come back the way Mary had taken your order, but you were afraid to complain because you didn't want to upset Hanya, because you just didn't want to upset Hanya. And so, but the food was unbelievable, and it was just a ton of fun going there. First, Mom passed away, and then the girls ran it, and it's too bad it's still not open because it was just a ton of fun. To this day, Mary and I are still friends. I still see her every now and then, help her out with whatever she needs. Hanya, unfortunately, passed away. And in fact, I was one of her pallbearers. And we miss her dearly. And so anyways, yeah, Pat's Lunch is just one of those staples of downtown Winnipeg that unfortunately eventually had to close down. And it's too bad that it did because I miss it greatly.
There were serious times, like when my mom got sick, they were there for us. And when my sister passed away, the Vice Division, they were a rough-looking group of guys. They came for prayers, and there was one big guy, Kenny Lugg. He's all tattooed. He shaves his head. And I said to him many, many times, Kenny, Hanya can make you cry. And actually, at Hanya's prayers, he cried.
There came a time when the Pat story comes to a close. Can you walk me through that?
Mom passed away. We continued with the business, but new people bought the buildings and they were not maintaining and things were getting pretty rough. So Hanya and I said, we have to do something about this. and we decided to pack it up, but then we figured in our heads that we will look for another place, and we tried that, but it was too expensive, so we did some catering on the side.
What was this problem that you're referring to that the building had?
The owners didn't really care about the people. They really wanted to get everybody out of the building, and there was a mouse infestation. We had the exterminators come in all the time, but it didn't help the problem. But we did have a goodbye party. Hanya and I wanted to step out quietly, but I got a call from the Vice Division, and a friend of mine says, we're having a party for you. Could you please break the news to your sister? I says, why? Are you too scared to give her the news? And he says, yeah, I am. So when I got off the phone, I says, Hanya, the guys are having a party for us. She says, well, you know what? We have all this food, the leftover. We'll just warm everything up for the day, and that's it. So we had actually people from the health department that were our health inspectors. They came down, and we had quite a few police officers come down.
Well, now I know from being your cousin that you don't mess with Hanya. You didn't mess with Hanya. But I also know she really liked me. And it wasn't just because of my cheery personality. She had a soft side for people. So once you get past that crusty exterior, and maybe was that a protection of sorts, having grown up in serving people in bar-like situations? Can you just talk about that?
I think we were raised that way just to protect ourselves and not to be taken advantage of, because Mom always said to be careful. Hanya acted the same way. You had to almost prove yourself to Hanya, and Hanya was a very good judge of character. One of the biggest accomplishments was my mom buying the restaurant. She was a woman that had street smarts, and in the old country, I think she went to grade 2 or 3 because she had to work on the farm or else there would be no food. She came to Canada, and I think that she made a big success of her life, because I have a pretty good life right now, and that's because of my mother and my sister.
Thank you for extending your hospitality to me and Larissa, and for being my cousin.
You're quite welcome. I'm still out on you if I like you.
You told my son this morning that I was a pain and always was a pain.
Yeah, and I'm sticking with that story.
In the program, Teresa Sekirka sang Mamina Sorochka. You heard the traditional song Iz Sirom Perohe. And this is Tuti Tam with Tanets Hryhorovicha. Nasha Kasha is supported in part by the Shevchenko Foundation and the Ukrainian Credit Union. New Pathway Ukrainian News delivers news and insight every week in English and Ukrainian. Subscribe today at newpathway.ca. Back in a week, God willing. До милої зустрічі за тиждень часу, дорогі слухачі.